thank you very much for the opportunity to present today deviceTRUST, our next game-changing release 20.1 to you guys. Also from our side, welcome to this interesting times and this very good event to the E2EVC Digital. And we're looking forward to give you an insight about on one side what we have done with our release, and also how COVID-19 has impacted the release a little bit from the features, because we learned a lot of interesting things with our solutions, with our existing and new customers, and we just want to share a little bit about this experience. So we will start with just my contact details. So if you want to do a QR code scan, then you have my contact details, but I will also show it later on again. That's not a problem. As I said, I want to start with a brief presentation. Just a general reminder to you guys, if you're interested to test drive deviceTRUST, we have a specific community registration form on our website. Go to the website and you get a 12-month unlimited license to test drive deviceTRUST. I will show this link again on the end. We want to give you a kind of corporate update on the beginning. It's just one slide, so no worries. As a German software vendor in the IT security space, we are looking up for a round A investment, which we closed end of last year, and we have very strong European investors on board. So Hessen Capital and TFH3 are also now signed end of last year, part of the deviceTRUST family, and they invested a 7-digit number into our product, which we can use now to accelerate our product, our sales marketing activities in that area. That's it about corporate update. Just as a general reminder also on why deviceTRUST, why the customers using deviceTRUST, what's the reason. And the big challenge with everything is based on your user authentication. When users is accessing your digital workspace, you know, based on the authentication or on the role, what user belongs to, is a sales, marketing, etc. But this in this modern world where we have this agility, this dynamic work, this mobile work, or this, as we have it right now, this home office work, the role itself is no longer sufficient to decide what kind of access permissions you get on the digital workspace. And this is very hard to the customers to meet their existing requirements. Whatever this is a security, compliance, or regulatory requirements, I will give you some insights. And we as deviceTRUST, we're solving that issue by adding after, and that's very important, after the user is authenticated, whatever you use is his username and password or is multi-factor authentication, we don't care. After the user is authenticated, our contextual security solution kicks in and provide more contextual information beside the user and role of the user to have according to the requirements, access to your digital workspace. That's what we're doing. And when we talk about contextual security, what did we mean with that? End of the day, it's all about context and actions. So what we mean is the context will be defined, and then based on the context, the action is happened. And this is what, when we talk about context, so I need to close the door here. Kids are crying. So when we talk about context, how can context be defined? Is on the left-hand side, you see user information. So this is not just the username and user group membership. It's any attribute of the user in your Active Directory environment. So it could be email address, it could be the company field or attribute. It could be anything you can imagine which is stored in Active Directory. And we have at the second part, this is what we call device information. This is information about the endpoint, where the endpoint is placed, is the endpoint secure, what kind of network the endpoint is using, etc., etc. And we can also add any external data sources which can all fill into the context or can provide information for the context definition. And if then the context is defined by one or many of this information, then defined action will be happen. So I think if you saw our presentations on the physical E2EV events in the past, we always talk about conditional access. I want to show you something about here. What's new? We have always conditional application access, and what's new with one of the next versions is conditional authentication. So our goal is that we want to be able to push for a multi-factor by maybe using Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator in the first instance. But as you say in this asterisk, this is coming. And we already have a conditional policy. We can tweak different policies based on the context, which could be Citrix policies, it could be Microsoft policies. We can add to reporting. We saw the Anuba agent, also Splunk and Elasticsearch is exactly the same kind of thing we are also doing. And we have custom actions, whatever we cannot provide within our product right now as a simple task, it can be customized here. And we integrate fully in third-party solutions. And again, we all do this without any additional infrastructure. That's very important. So to use deviceTRUST, you don't need a management server, etc. We integrate fully in what you have. So the configuration of deviceTRUST is taking place in Microsoft Group Policy, and that's it. To briefly talk about the use cases before I go more in a live demonstration, though that's the target for today. So as you can see here, this is a summary of our use cases, which we brought to market a couple of years ago. I think at the moment in COVID-19, this home office and this compliance check is very often used or discussed with our customers, as well as compliant application access. But this is just a summary for yourself that you see what are the major use cases you can address with deviceTRUST Contextual Security solution. And with the actions we have. So this is really across whole security related use cases down to, and we talk about this meeting room, which I think is a very interesting one, which has less to do with security. This is just policy stuff. When you're based in a meeting room or your endpoint is based in a meeting room, the session idle time is different as when you work from your normal working desk, or if you're outside the corporate network, it also can be adapted based on that context. And this is what we also provide as templates in our product. So with the next release, for each of these different use cases, on one side we have the website. We're also getting a new website where we show all these different use cases. And if you are, as a technical guy, wants to say, hey, this home office use case seems very interested, or compliance check is interested for me, so you can install deviceTRUST. And in this deviceTRUST, we will change the starting page a little bit, but we have the sharing button, import templates, and you will find, this is not fully, there's not all templates in this beta implemented, but in the final release, you will find for all of these use cases, all templates we provide, for example, for home office, for compliance check, license compliance, whatever unauthorized USB drive is. And if you can select one, then you can select between two options or multiple options we provide. And the only thing you need to do is just click on that, import the template, and then everything is imported. And we will have also a guide on our documents website, which will tell you exactly where you need to adapt your customized information. And that's it. That's what we want to do with 21, is to make it for you guys, for our customers, much, much easier to get up and running from the high-level presentation, sales, marketing view down to the technical level. And as I said, I want to concentrate a little bit on this home office and compliance check today. I want to show you the improvements we have done and also the lessons we learned from the last 6 months since we have this COVID-19 crisis. So let's jump into a live demo to go over some new stuff. So first of all, we talked always when we talk about compliance check. So what does compliance check means? Compliance check in a nutshell is you only want to allow access from devices which are compliant to requirements. So, and we can discuss it. We have now more than 70 people in this session. You can ask now everyone, and I would guess you get at least 100 different answers what he thinks or she thinks what is a compliant endpoint. The good news is with deviceTRUST, this can be fully customized. So we provide, as I said, we provide templates, different templates, but we have, I would say, most of these templates meets, I would say, 80 to 85% of the customer requirements, and there still can be added with new stuff. So if you're looking for other stuff which we have not in a template, it's very easy to add this to your to the existing template, or you start from scratch. It's also important when I show the demo, I show the demo purely on Citrix, but for us as deviceTRUST, we don't care what technology you're using. If you're using Citrix today and you want to move to Windows Virtual Desktops tomorrow, don't care. So for whatever you will see now here in the demo, it's independent from the remoting technology. We support any remoting technology which is on planet or for on-premise or for cloud-based. And as I said, I'm just demonstrating it on Citrix in my environment. And it doesn't care what network infrastructure is in between. If you're using Netscaler, right, because you're Citrix customer, using traditional VPN from Microsoft or Juniper, whatever you use, we don't care. As long as the endpoint can establish a connection to your backend, to your VDI environment or end user computing environment, we can work out of the box without any need to change anything on the platform. And because compliance check can be really mixed up with just simple stuff like, is there a firewall active? Is the antivirus active? And is antivirus pattern file not older than 7 days? So that's the minimum we see. And the maximum is it goes into Windows updates, threat detection. It goes to open firewall ports. It can go to installed certificates, etc. on Windows or Mac. But on which we also support, for example, is ITIL. Or some other thin client vendor. But with ITIL is very interesting also on this COVID-19 crisis, is where they took the physical thin client out of the office and put it back into the home office. And what the customer was saying, hey, we are concerned that maybe now some other thin clients can connect our environment. So they're not talking about Windows devices or Mac devices, they just talk about thin clients. So how can we ensure that just Eagle managed endpoints can connect our environment? That's also part of our compliance check, as an example. But I focus only on Windows here. And as you can see, firewall is all great, it's all perfect. So if I sign in, this is nice. I can access my digital environment. And I'll also show the demo just on published desktop, but it also works on published application in the same way. So I'm in this session now, and we know now the full context of the endpoint. So I show you this briefly. So we have here, just zoom in a little bit. So under Hake current user in the virtual session, you see in this path a context called security state. This, by the way, the user cannot manipulate. So it's important to change the permissions, change the value. And this value is only in the registry to give you the ability to see it. So we don't need to publish that in the registry or environment variables. This is just for the third-party tools. If you like used to use Citrix WEM, WEM can collect our context information through different interfaces, and one is the registry, but we can disable and enable everything. This is just for visibility for you. So this is nice. The endpoint meets my requirements, and if I change now something on the endpoint, in this instance, I'm changing the firewall, then a conditional access kicks in. And what you see here, this shell, this is the secure desktop shell from Microsoft. So you cannot breach that. It's impossible, because that's the same technology Microsoft is using for the UAC control. No? It's exactly the same. The only difference is that we fill it up with our own data, with our own color scheme, etc. And this is what we call conditional access. So we can also act this on logon or reconnect. This is clear. This also works. I don't show you that, but we can do this also during session runtime. And that's also a lesson we learned from the last couple of weeks and months, is the customers are really concerned to say, hey, why should I check something when the user logs on and it works now 8 hours in the home office, but when something happened between this 8 hours, I also want to be informed. I want to act on that. And this is something where we kicks in dynamically when something changes. If the virus identified on the endpoint, we can kick in. Just going back to this one, and this is our default view. So this message can be customized. You can write it down in different languages. So we pick the language of the user session. You can give a hint what's wrong. You don't give a hint what's wrong. We have customers saying, this is an error code. But one thing we learned, and this is part of the new of 20.1, is whatever you put down here, so potentially the user have no clue how to fix this firewall stuff now, no? So where to go and enable firewall and check everything. So what we have changed now in 20.1, so let me sign out this user and enable a different deviceTRUST config. So this is this one. Just changing the active policy for deviceTRUST to show you the new stuff. And what's happened now is, come on, open. So what's happened now is, let me sign in, clean up a little bit the screen, but we have more screen, or a clearer screen to show it. So now we are back into the system, and as you saw before in the message, We only had the endpoint does not meet your requirements, and that's it. Now we can provide additional buttons on that screen. And the good news is you can define what you want to do with these buttons. You can decide, you can define the text, you can define the action behind that. In this example, it's just a help button. So what that happens is if I click now the help button, the browser on the endpoint gets opened and it's forwarded maybe to a self-service portal of the customer, which exactly says, hey, your problem is a firewall, please enable now the firewall, no? And giving guidance how to do it, what's the steps for it. We're also working on a kind of guidance for the traditional problems, so the customers can forward it to our guides, or they're using their own portals to apply. So as you can see, that was one part of it. So we can provide a help functionality. So let me see if I'm quick enough. No, I'm not quick enough. So the second one, and this is also optional, just to show you two different things for this button thing, is also implemented on the customer side. So why I have just as to explain that, why I've disconnected the user, because when a user logs on to a VDI or to a terminal server, he gets at that state the latest deviceTRUST config, and this config stays for the whole session runtime. And because I want to change the config, I need to make sure the user logs on again to get the new stuff. So this was a simple help request. And the second example I show you, and you know what we do now, we straight go to a disabled firewall. This is now a bit more advanced, and this was also a requirement we learned from a customer. And this requirement is about, they call it VIP users. So what they wanted to do is, instead of giving guidance on how to fix the issue, they can now go to say, hey, request support. So what's happened behind the scenes is there's a call made to the IT help desk system. This is in this instance was for the customer instance, it was sometimes it is an email request, sometimes it is a web request. And then within this web request, we provide exact details why the user cannot sign in. And though the help desk guy can proactively call the guy and can say, hey, I know what's wrong, I help you with this one, so you can work. Because one thing we learned from that is it's nice to prevent the users to log on, but you need to work on this, how to fix the issue, because the user wants to work. And you cannot block out the user the whole time. So what we see here, this is a kind of email notification system. So first of all, let me open this two emails. So I have done it in two separate emails, but we can do this also in one. This is this call request or help request, where we say exactly, please contact the user demo title, chief demo officer. Here's a phone number from Active Directory. So the attribute of the user as soon as possible, because he cannot log in, and help him to solve the issue. And we have it here in a separate report, but it could be also in one report. Then you see again for demo user, or for the user demo, you see exactly what the issue was, and it was a firewall. The firewall was disabled and needs to be enabled. So the help desk guy can now actively call the guy and can say, hey, I know what's wrong, I help you to fix the issue. And that's two simple examples. I wanted to show you how we can use now this conditional access. So let me just switch to the next presentation. So this gives you a nice overview that we can prevent access to the session if the compliance check is not met. And I just showed you the security one. I'll show you now a second one. And if it's blocked, we have different options what we can do with the user. We can help him, we can advise help, we can give hints, and we can even go further with that. We can also automate fix the issue if this is wanted as well. This is also a possibility. So that was part one of this compliance check, and this is just our default config or default template. So in a normal compliance enforcement, we check the country you're coming from. We're checking if the Wi-Fi is secure, if is the endpoint remote controlled, is the endpoint virtualized, and if the endpoint is protected. And if it's not if it's unprotected, then we deny access. It's just our normal templates which we use to demonstrate that. On the second one, this is now the home office one. The home office one is also very interesting, and we learned a lot over the last couple of weeks. So let me enable the firewall now back again. And I show you now, as part of the home office compliance check, we also check, customers are really concerned about if the users are working from outside the corporate network and they may be sitting somewhere in a public environment because they're using an open Wi-Fi access point, so an unsecure Wi-Fi connection. This is something what they don't want. So what you can see here, I'm connected now with a public Wi-Fi or with a non-encrypted Wi-Fi access point. And if I access now the environment now again, compliance check kicks in, also as the same as with the security state, and said, hey, you're using an unsecure Wi-Fi network, you're not allowed to log on. No? Okay, I was not quick enough with that, because you see we do everything live and in color. Maybe I haven't enable that for this use case. Maybe I've forgotten that. So sorry for that. Normally it will also kicks in the same way as we saw before with the security state. But if you have passed this compliance check, you have now, and this is an optional way, you have now the option to validate my existing environment as my home office. I can link the user to privacy policy, so the user can exactly see what kind of data gets collected and what they're doing with this data, my company, etc., etc. And if I'm happy with that, I say, yeah, that's my home office. I click validate, and then we took metadata of your current location, and optional, or in our template is per default, this gets hashed up. So you, as an IT guy, you will never can draw back conclusions about the environment. And this is what you can see here in what we call detected home office. And we have also a validated home office. And what we are doing, we're just comparing this to your information when you sign in next time. And if they are not equal, then we know you're not in your home office. And then you have different options what you can do. You can say, I prevent access. When you are from external and you're not in your home office, I prevent access to my environment. Or I say, I let you in, but you're only allowed to run office applications. And this is something we have built in by end of last year, but it was really valuable for this COVID-19 crisis right now, because we had some customers are really concerned about privacy, about they have regulatory requirements because they are healthcare, they are governmental, finance customer, and they want to draw down the home office to 1 or 2 or 3 locations only. And this validation string can be stored in the registry and the user profile on disk, wherever you want, and then we're just taking that next time. And that is the home office use case. And if I now sign in from a different device, so what I have here is it's not, okay, you will see it, you will believe in me, or you saw it before, when I would use now a different device, I would not get access to this environment because I'm not accessing from this validated environment. And that is also something in our home office use case template, which we built in this validation process. So come on, here's the validation process built in. We have here the privacy policy. And when you come in back, we compare the existing validated string with the current detected office. And then in this instance, we deny access, but we can also easily go, instead of denying access, we can also go into here, and in tasks, we have lots of other stuff. So we can deny access to applications, because if you're not in the home office, not in the corporate office, you can run Office, but not the business critical applications with FSLogix or AppLogger, or you're using third-party tools like Ivanti application control, which also can be triggered from us. That was a simple example about our home office use case as part of the new stuff. So let me store that. And now something new also is compliant application access, what we mean with that. So this is also something I want to demonstrate to you. So let's see, I disconnect the Wi-Fi before I do this, because I want to show you also some new stuff coming up with deviceTRUST and 20.1. I got a question here. I answer this question later on, Matthias, no? On the end. So in this instance, I want to show you also some new stuff, new capabilities of deviceTRUST. So in the past, we are able, based on context, so whatever the context could be, as a general reminder, to you in this screen. So context can be driven by user metadata, by endpoint metadata, or any external data source. Maybe to express a little bit on external data source, we have customers using SharePoint lists where specific information are stored. It could be databases, could be web interfaces, whatever. And this is all taken into the context definition. In our example, what we are using now is a simple context. I want to show it you quickly. And this context is the endpoint is using, let me go into the full screen mode, if the endpoint is using a secure Wi-Fi network. And this is the definition of this context called Wi-Fi security mode. And this can be turned out into is using no Wi-Fi, is using an insecure Wi-Fi, or using a secure Wi-Fi. And based on these values, we can now trigger the product to do some actions. And this is what we have here. So we have on one side, on logon, on reconnect, or during session runtime, if the context Wi-Fi security mode becomes no Wi-Fi or secure, we create a shortcut. We create a shortcut for a web application. So the shortcut generation is also new. And this is very flexible. You can define here where you want to store any kind of shortcuts. It does not need to be only the desktop. In default, it is a desktop, and it's the start menu of the user. And if the Wi-Fi security mode becomes insecure, we deny with AppLocker to our access to the business application. We terminate the application if it's running, and we deny access to the web application. And this is also new stuff here, which I want to demonstrate to you. So the business application in our example is just Notepad++. It could be any application which can be installed on your environment. And this application can only be used if the context is saying, going back to the context, no Wi-Fi or secure Wi-Fi. And that's the case. So we have also a critical business web application. In my instance, it's just a link to my QNAP at home, so I can sign in now and can access. And I can also try an RDP session to a backend system. I also want to do this as an additional one. You see, I can access this, is working fine, perfect. So, but what's happened now is this also works on logon and on reconnect, but I save time by just not doing reconnect and disconnect. So I select now the public Wi-Fi during session runtime. This information now, it's not a real-time value. This is information, so network informations are normally dynamic values. They're changing once per minute, and we can adapt this once per minute to whatever time you want. In this instance, it's down to 10 seconds. And as you have seen here, the context has been changed now. As you can see, Wi-Fi security mode is now insecure. So that means we have now an insecure network on the outside, on the endpoint, and we adapt this with new policies in the virtual environment. So you don't see the links anymore for the business application and business web application. And also the link is taken away from the start menu because you should not run it. But I'm a smart user. I know where the first business application is installed. So it was Notepad++. So let's go into the start menu because I haven't removed it. So AppLocker kicks in and said, no, you're not allowed to run this application. With a web application, it's the same kind of thing. If I try to access this application with IP addresses, with whatever, with DNS, with HTTPS or HTTP, I cannot access this application anymore. And if I try to access my backend system again, it will fail because there's no connection into the backend system anymore. And the interesting thing here, and this is also a lesson we learned, I would say, from the community/channel. We had two partners that came up with a request to say, hey, deviceTRUST, how can we, I think you do it well with installed applications, but what can you do about using the Citrix server or this end user computing environment to hop to the next one, to a backend system? What can we do to prevent that if the context is not met? And they looked for separate solutions, and they came back and said, you know what? The Microsoft Windows firewall can have policies, outbound policies, user-based. Can you deviceTRUST not trigger other adding rules and removing rules based on the context? This would be fantastic in the same way you do this for AppLocker or IFS Logics. And this is what we have done. So if I go back to my host, just to show it to you, going into the Windows Defender firewall, going into advanced settings, outbound rules, you see now deviceTRUST rules for this user session. No? So, and if I now try, as you have seen here, if I try to access, it's not possible. And if I now go to the endpoint, and just as a demo example, I don't want to use always disconnect, reconnect, blah, blah, blah. You see, this network is not available anymore. If we go into the context, you see now no Wi-Fi is used or secure Wi-Fi. You see immediately the icons came back, and I can start now again the application notepad, and I can again start the application, the web application, because we have removed this user-based policy in the Microsoft firewall to allow access. And I even can use now again RDP to access my backend. But what we can also do is, and it's also important, so let's assume I left an application open, I reconnect from outside or from somewhere else where I'm not allowed to run this application. We can still close down running instance as well. So that means if I change now back to my Wi-Fi, as I said, I'm not doing this always with disconnect and reconnect. I do this all sessions during the session runtime. So after the Wi-Fi network is identified, the context is changed, which happens now. And now we get a message again, this can be customized, the timeout can be customized, we can close down the application immediately. It's all up to you what you want to do. If I close the application, there's no way to run this application anymore. And that is also the last demo for today, or not the last, there's one little more stuff, which shows you that with deviceTRUST, we can control access to applications which are installed natively on your environment. With a connection is denied as user access. No. Okay, I will answer this question also. So, so with deviceTRUST now, you're able to easily allow or deny access to business to applications are installed, but also for web applications. And again, the messages can be all customized in whatever way you want. And this is what you have seen here. This is a context for my demo environment. They used now different templates from us. And behind the template, we use the metadata. I think I don't need to tell you metadata for user, group membership, and username, you know this. But for device information, we have now here properties, which starts with device. This is information, also really device information in the virtual environment about my endpoint. And we only, and this is also new, we only collect device information which are asked by our configuration. In the old world of deviceTRUST, so in the current release, I show you, whenever I sign in, deviceTRUST always collects all metadata which we can do on an endpoint to show it in the virtual environment. This is not good anymore, because this is also something we learned about data privacy. So we have adopted that because we have a lot of European customers, etc. So in the old days, we always collected all metadata we can do, also including geolocation, logical disk. You see, there's much more information, and customers were a bit concerned about that. But you could use to disable that. You can easily go now to disable what you don't need. But it would be much more nicer if you only collect this information which you request by your configuration. And that's something I want to show you at the last bit. So if I go sign out here, go back into my configuration, deviceTRUST, and what I'm doing now is I'm disabling, for example, all the context information, or just let one enabled, and this is a Wi-Fi one. That's the only one which I enable now. The rest is all disabled, as you can see. Let me also disable that stuff. And if I sign in now again, you will see that only those metadata of the endpoint are available which are asked by my context definition called Wi-Fi. So, and that's also new. So we really took this feedback from our customers in the channel to only collect those information which are asked by the config. And if I go into here now, you say we have only the context security mode, and you will see here only device information which are relevant for this definition of the security, of this Wi-Fi security context. This information are always the out-of-the-box information which are available. It just gives you information about deviceTRUST, if there's what license you're using, and you see here the default information you got also without deviceTRUST, the IP address, the name, and the platform. This is what you get, and we only collect the information you ask for. And we can go even further with that, and that's the last bit, and then I'm done. It's if you're, let's say, if you're interested in geolocation, so you say, hey, you know what, I always want geolocation information independent from whatever this configuration will tell me. I'm just using this example as an option. You can still go into deviceTRUST, into properties, you can go into device filter. This is all the categories of information we can collect. You go in the filter location and you can easily say enable, and it will always get this information independent of if you are using it in a config or not. Or you can be selective. You can say, you know what, I'm only interested down to the town, but not in the street and a house number. No? So this is still possible, and even we can even go further with that. With the next release is, let me sign in now again. We can even say the information, the geolocation will be collected because we need this. We are regulated environment, so we need to make sure the business application can be only accessed from within defined countries, blah, blah, blah. So all these stories, you know that. But we can make this information, we can collect this information, but the good news is we don't need to publish this information in here. You can see now the full geolocation information are visible. So if you're saying, I'm not interested in the building and street, etc., you know, you saw it before, you can disable it. But the good news is we can easily blacklist or deny this information to be visible in the registry, be visible in the event log or in any reporting solution. So the outcome could be just, I'm in a compliant country, yes or no, or compliant location, yes or no, or true or false, and that is, and the information we need to collect that or define this position or this compliant access can be really hidden from yourself, from the IT guys, from reporting, but also from the user session. So nobody can draw back conclusions of where the user is accessing from. And that's also new into deviceTRUST. So I give you a quick view of that. So we still have some traditional ADMX part, which we're reducing from release to release and put everything into the console. Under settings, we have this persistence, and within persistence, you can easily go in and can define what metadata, what context information are where available. And I can go to, for example, into the Windows registry, and I can say, I don't want to see any property which starts with device location, no? And exclude that. I can also disable the registry if I don't want. Now, this is all possible. The good news is now having more and more in the UI from deviceTRUST, you can easily go to export the whole config into JSON strings. So including everything. This is just JSON. I'll show you if I open Notepad and just put it in. This is just JSON format string. You go to the next customer, to the next environment, and just use this information to import it to the console back and just make your changes. Wrap up time. Okay, perfect. So this was a brief overview about the next release of deviceTRUST. I have not talked much about our architecture. If you have any questions, there's a couple of questions I will answer now. More afterwards, please come back to us. I will show here again my contact details in a second. And wrap up time, so unique selling points, very important. You don't need to replace your existing user authentication. Use whatever you use. If it's with MFA or without, we don't care. No additional infrastructure. Use your existing access technologies. We integrate into any existing management solution. So if your WEM wants to use it, do it. And the important point here is, and that's very important, to do all this magic, we don't need to manage your endpoint. If this is a corporate managed endpoint, or a BYOD or whatever, don't care. We don't care. We don't need to manage the endpoint. For us, it doesn't matter. And this brings you to this marketing benefits, which I don't want to talk through now. Again, gentle reminder, if you're interested to test drive deviceTRUST, join our community program just on devicetrust.com/community. Just add your details into here and you get a 12 months unlimited NFR license for yourself. It's not for production environments, more for you to test drive a little bit. And that's my contact details. I leave that open now. If you're interested to contact us, go use this contact information. And I will also now answer the questions, or there's a bit more as I thought. So the first one is, if you click the help button, the browser on the endpoint is opened. How do I use it? To sync dance. Perfect. The question was, I saw your initial on my on my initial demo where I said we can guide the user with a help button. You click the help button and it opens on the local endpoint browser window. We can differentiate between if this is an IHL device or, for example, this is a Windows or Mac device. So we can trigger this option for different things. So on IHL, we could also open on an IHL device a local browser to do the same kind of thing. So this would also work. Then the next question, it would be if a user would see a message indicating why connection is denied as user. Yeah, exactly. No? This is what I said before is when we deny access to the session, we can have a message which is for very high security risky environments that don't want to publish any information what's wrong. They maybe use error codes. Error code 5 means firewall, error code 7 means antivirus, and so on. But as I said, we can customize this message, and we can also customize this message for different user groups. Now, if you have external people who are really concerned about you, don't give a hint, you just say error code 5 and they need to call your support. But you can also give a hint. You can say, hey, your firewall is disabled, please enable the firewall, or you do any other action on the button. Whatever you want to do, we can give exact details why you're blocked out if you want that.
All right.
Which blocking?
So we have to really wrap up session. There is a question as well in the question box.
Yeah, I just see it. Yeah.
I'll assign it to you, and then you
exactly.
will be able to respond to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks very much.
Just do this.
Very good demo. Definitely very good demo. Next one is the two crises. I'm just gonna make the two crises presenters.
Just Alex, thank you for the time, guys. Any questions? See you soon. Thank you, Alex.